Welcome to Page One, the show for writers with the reader in mind. Here's your host, Zita Christian.
Hi everyone, welcome to Page One. I'm Zita Christian. Tonight I have the pleasure of introducing to you two wonderful writers and two of my very dear friends. I'm so glad they could come tonight so that you could get to meet them. First on my right, Sharon Shulze. Sharon, thanks very much for being here. Multi-published author of medieval romances, absolutely love them. And next to you, Leslie O'Grady, writing as Leslie O'Grady and as Lindsay Chase.
Yes.
A humorous mystery, a whole 3 big women's fictions, a lot of historical romance, a lot of history here in publishing among the 3 of us, and certainly between the 2 of you. And what I want to talk about specifically tonight is the whole aspect of publishing and how things have changed with a lot of electronic publishing. But before I do that, just a couple quick things to kind of set the stage for as we get into what your experience and your role in things. Sharon, 7 medieval romances published by Harlequin.
Yes.
But before you started writing, you had a whole different career. Tell us what you were doing before writing.
I was a civil engineer. I worked at a sewage treatment plant, and that's where I started writing in a notebook during my lunch breaks.
So you were working in a sewage treatment plant, civil engineer, and were you reading romance at the time?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I've always been a romance reader.
I can imagine you'd need some diversity at that point. I know one of the things that in some of your publicity material, I love the quote, I want to read it. It said that in your writing, you get a chance to experience days gone by without encountering disease, vermin, and archaic plumbing.
Yes.
I thought, how cool, considering what you were doing when you started writing.
Exactly.
That was wonderful. And Leslie, writing as Leslie O'Grady, quite a few books, but
Yes.
also as Lindsay Chase.
Yes.
I know you have a humorous mystery that one of my favorite characters, a long list of historical romance novels set in many, many places, 3 of the big Lindsay Chase books,
Yes.
and published by Berkeley, and they're being re-released in electronic form
Yes.
by
Samhain Publishing.
Yes.
Yes.
So this whole idea of re-releasing, because Sharon, you also have books that are being and have been re-released, and you also have you also have a book in the manga version, which we're going to get to in just a minute. But Leslie, I want to start with you first. The 3 big Lindsay Chase books that are being re-released. So you have the 3 titles.
The Oath, The Vow, and Honor.
And Honor. Now, they were originally published by
Berkeley in the early 90s.
So in the 90s, now they're coming out
Yes.
from Samhain Publishing. How does that happen? What's the process of having a book that comes out in traditional paperback form by one publisher and then go to another publisher?
Well, to give you a little history of the backlist, I'm sure most of your viewers know that a backlist is the body of an author's work.
Yes.
And in the old days, say an author wrote 10 books. Well, her backlist, once it went out of print, it was gone.
Yes.
The only place you could get the books were in used bookstores. And we all remember going to used bookstores and trying to find somebody's backlist. But now that the books are published in electronic form, they never die. They don't go anywhere. You can always get them in an electronic format.
Which is wonderful.
It's
so,
great.
So you're focusing on 3. You have an extensive backlist, but
Yes.
you're focusing right now on 3 of them.
Yes.
The Oath, the Vow, and Honor.
Yep.
So Berkeley publishes them.
Yes.
How do you get from a copy that came out in the 90s over to another publisher coming out in another format?
They go out of print and you get your rights back.
Okay, so
And
then you control it,
yes,
the story.
Once you have your rights back, you control it and you can sell it to whomever you please.
And you chose to go with Samhain.
Yes.
And why did you choose that publisher?
I had
Because
heard-
there are a lot of them out there.
Oh, yes. I had heard so many good things from other writers, aside from the fact that they do beautiful covers, which is very important.
Oh, yes.
Because people do judge a book by its cover.
Absolutely, they do.
And their whole business model, they provide promotion, publicity. They do everything from the formatting to sending the books to the vendors. There's more to self-publishing than sending your Word document to Amazon.
Yeah, there's an awful lot more.
There's a lot to do, and it's. I just didn't want to get involved in the whole self-publishing, taking care of all this.
No, you want to write.
Right, I
Yeah,
want to have the time to write.
Exactly.
So I thought I'll go with Samhain, and they were enthusiastic about the books, and they're doing very well for them, so I made a good decision.
Good, excellent. So we're going to get more into that a little later, but Sharon, I want to ask you now. You also have an extensive backlist, and some of the books are out in electronic form. But one of the things I wanted specifically to talk with you about, because you have books in a format that I had never seen before. I'd heard about it, but not seen. This manga, am I pronouncing
manga.
it correctly? So what is a manga format of a book?
It's a Japanese cartoon book, basically. It's a graphic novel that they take your actual, the text of your novel, and an artist goes through and renders it in frames, and it's a certain style. It's like anime type of style, flowing hair, the very large eyes on the characters. And then they bring it out in Japan. It's very popular there, and even as regular novels. Here you see all different forms of it, children's manga, adults manga. With this, though, basically, they take actual romances, historical romances, and they just do them in that format.
And how did that happen? I mean, your books, the historicals, were published by Harlequin. So did they arrange for the mangas?
Yes.
Okay, so you didn't. That wasn't something you had to do.
No. They have extensive offices around the world, and in Japan, romance is very popular. Historical romances and medieval, especially, are really popular. My books had come out as the novelizations translated into Japanese initially, and then, unbeknownst to me, until I happened to see, roaming around Amazon, Japan, to see if I had any new books out, that there were these manga versions. I didn't even know what they were, so I went through the process of ordering them from a website in Japanese with very bad translations, but I did manage to get copies of the books. They're beautiful. I really was very pleased with them.
So in terms of the translation, because now you've gone from something that's in print to something that is graphic, do you feel that the story is accurately portrayed in the graphics?
Astoundingly so. I was quite amazed to see even setting, buildings, a village. The first book that I bought is one that takes place a great deal in a small medieval village with an artisan's workshop, and I was astounded at the setting that they portrayed. I can follow the story, even though I can't obviously read any of the captions because they're in Japanese, but they followed it very, very closely.
Wow.
Which tells me as well that the translation that was done initially must have been very, very accurate, because the foreign ones are not always accurate.
That's good to know. It occurs to me, I know both of you ladies have gotten fan mail over the years. When the manga version came out, did you get any different kind of fan mail from people who discovered your stories because it's in a totally different format?
I find blog posts.
Okay.
A lot of people were blogging. It was several years ago that they came out that way, and I can recognize the format of my name in Japanese, and I went to Amazon.com and I copied it and I pasted it into Google and put it in to see what would happen, and I found a lot of blog posts where people reviewed books. They discussed them amongst themselves and that type of thing. It's a huge community that does that.
That's
so
amazing.
I did find reviews that way, and at times, it really was like they were hoping. You could tell they were hoping that the authors would read what they had written. So it was pretty exciting. Yes,
very.
I don't know
nice.
how the translation was in some cases. Some of them were actually written in English, but most of them were not.
I think the whole process is fascinating, and the big thing that I wanted to talk with both of you tonight, about was because we have been through, the three of us, gosh, Leslie, I know it's been 25 years, and it's got to be close to that, Sharon, with you as well, 25 years, and critiquing together weekly for most of those years. Well, you two certainly have, and then I stepped in and out, for job-related things. But I want to talk about the things that we have noticed in the differences in publishing, especially with the advent of electronic publishing. And Leslie, I want to start with you, that there's a difference between how authors write, how publishers publish, how authors and publishers promote. There's so many differences, but let's start with the way that the authors write. I remember vividly when I had finished my first manuscript and I was ready to send it, and someone had requested it, and I thought, how do I package this? Do I put it in a box? Do I staple it? Big thick staple. It's like 400 pages. And I remember you took me to the stationery store and showed me what number of padded envelopes to get, and every
elastic
little thing.
bands.
The elastic
Yes.
bands. There was so much I didn't know, and they're just those little basic details.
Yes.
But there are no more padded envelopes now.
No.
So what's the system now?
Everything is electronic and by email. You submit by email. The editor sends you edits by email. So all of us have been saving a ton of money on postage.
Oh, for sure.
Definitely.
I also remember when you're talking about editing, I remember when I got my manuscript back, the first manuscript for copy editing. Do you remember I called you? I was in tears. It had to have had easily 100 yellow sticky notes.
Yes.
One of them, the first one on the very first page. Oh, this is terrible. And now everything is done with that, track feature.
Yes, on the
Track
Word.
changes.
The track changes. Yes, it's a whole different world. Oh, and what about compatible software? Has that been an issue for either of you, or is it pretty much the publishers are using?
I think Word is the standard, and with Word you can adjust the compatibility.
Yes.
So, if the editor requests a PDF, you can do that. And all of the other.
I think it was more of an
different
issue
things.
with contracted books in the
Right,
past.
right.
With various word processing programs I had Lotus at one point, and my publisher couldn't take the files of the actual book when I had to send a disc in with the file, so I had to find a way to translate it. The rich text format, I believe, is what I did for that. And eventually, it seems like most people are now using some form of Word, and that seems to be the gold standard.
It makes things so
Big
much
difference.
easier.
Definitely.
But the advance of electronic publishing has also changed the way agents sell, and writers who are selling their books themselves sell. And the biggest thing that I have noticed is this whole thing about authors having to have a platform. So I remember it used to be, remember how we would have the conversations about what kind of bookmarks you were going to create for your books? That's all different now.
Do you have glossy bookmarks, 4-color?
Oh, yeah.
Just black and white. Everything was
about the bookmark and sending out a color flat or something.
Yes.
But it's different now. So what are the kinds of things that you have each done, thinking about doing, or you've heard other authors do, talking about this whole concept of a platform?
I always thought the platform was more for people who did nonfiction books, or if you did a specific thing like your romantic suspense or whatnot. But in terms of promotion, a lot is available electronically.
I think that's what they look for more, is how tied in are you to social networking? Do you have a blog? Do you have a good active website? Are you on Facebook? Do you tweet? Do you go to conferences where people who are tied into all that go?
And then somewhere in there, do you write?
Yeah, that's the big question.
That's
the
big question.
Let's talk about the changes in the way books are published. Covers are a big deal. And one of the things I want to talk about tonight is, Leslie, I'm going to use you as an example first. Let's talk about the Lindsay Chase books. 3 of the Lindsay Chase books, The Oath, The Vow, and Honor, that came out from Berkeley. Original paperback. They have a certain look to the 3 covers, and when we're seeing them, they're beautiful. But now, Sam Hain is re-releasing as ebooks, and I know that Honor is not out yet, but The Oath and The Vow are out as electronic books. And so you have new covers that I think we have on the computer in there, the new covers. There's The Oath. That is a gorgeous cover.
Isn't it gorgeous?
That's absolutely beautiful. And there's The Vow. Now, while we have The Vow up, I just want to notice that cover looks amazingly, has a resemblance to the Cheney silk mills.
Mills, yes.
So? Yeah, so we'll get into that here, a little later, because yes, there's a fictional town.
Yes.
And the story takes place in a silk mill.
Yep.
Yeah. So this whole idea of covers, one of the things that always occurs to me when somebody decides to self-publish, they have to, if they're going to do everything themselves, one of the things they have to do is get a cover.
A good cover.
A good cover. Now, I have seen examples of just awful, and I feel terrible for the author, because sometimes it's a matter of not having enough money to hire a good artist. Sometimes the author did pay very good money, and it's not effective at all. And then sometimes, like our friend Joyce Ware, who has a wonderful book called The Dragon Whisperer, which she decided, she had multiple books published, fiction and nonfiction, but for reasons of her own decided to self-publish The Dragon Whisperer, her first book for young adults, and she hired an artist. Yes. So I know I had not rejoined Critique Group until just when she was getting the cover. So could you two talk a little bit about what you remember of that process of getting the cover? Because I think she came out with a gorgeous cover for that book.
Definitely. Yeah. She had she checked a lot of artists and illustrators, and then she settled on this one who had experience doing fantasy covers. And he's an illustrator who does the artwork himself. A lot of the covers that are photoshopped. The graphic artist will buy stock photos and manipulate the images through Photoshop. And the days of you're getting a Pinot cover, which was that was that was the ultimate, was having an illustrator like Pinot do your romance cover. But now everything is mostly Photoshop because the publishers save a lot of money.
Well, just as a little sideline for people in the audience who might not be aware of how that all worked, used to be publishers would hire live models. Yes. Pose them and take photos and then give the photos to someone like Pinot, and he would, or another artist would paint. I mean, in oil painting.
Yes, an oil painting.
I mean, that would take a long time, and then create the cover. Because I know several authors who have purchased
would
the
buy
paintings.
the paintings. Sure.
And so a lot of that has changed now. Let's talk a little bit too about the fact, and boy, there's some pros and cons to this one. The fact that electronic publishing has made it possible for anyone to publish a book. And Sharon, you had made mention just a moment ago about it's so much more now. Well, now a person can just take a Word document and send it up to Smashwords or Amazon or any number of places now and have it published. But there are drawbacks. So let's talk about the drawbacks. Well, first let's talk about the pros. Let's say somebody decides they're going to publish their own book, do it all themselves. Just jump in. What are some of the pros?
You get to keep all the money.
That's a biggie.
Yeah. Also, if you are writing something that's such a niche type of thing, and we've had friends in the past who have gone down that road. They had books that were extremely long or a very small subgenre that no publisher, traditional publisher would go for. But that way, you can do it all yourself. You can bring it out there, and there usually is a market. Even like say westerns. For a long time, you couldn't find westerns in stores, but people were still looking for them. So if you have something that is a little more obscure, a bigger book or a big sweeping saga that the regular publishers wouldn't do, this way you can bring it out. And as Leslie said, you get to keep all the money. Of course, you also get to do all the other work.
Right, and you have control too.
That's true.
There's no editor telling you, which can be good and can be bad.
Can be bad as well. Because I put that in both categories. Also, I think one of the things is that you control the cost of the book. You set the price.
Definitely.
If you're going to do it yourself, you control the cover.
Right.
So if you want a clinch cover, if you want a bouquet of flowers, if you want just words, whatever it is. And I've known authors who have self-published who have had a family member draw a picture, and If that family member is a graphic artist, that's wonderful. And
if
if
he's
it
not,
isn't, that's a problem.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
let's talk a little bit about the cons of self-publishing. I know one of the things that even if an author is not self-publishing, but going to some of the electronic publishers, not the case with Samhain, but some of them, the publishers want the author to convert the manuscript first.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an issue. So having to convert a book, if you already have let's say this is an author who has a backlist, and converting. Talk about the challenges of distribution.
Well, I think even with the converting older manuscripts or books that you got the rights back to, there's a whole cottage industry that's sprung up around
Yes,
around
definitely,
self-publishing.
definitely.
Because you may not have an editor, and maybe you need one, because most people do, and not everyone is as fortunate as we
Right.
are to have a really good, strong critique
Yep.
group.
Yes.
So, there are people who are freelance editors. There are people who, actually, I know of one woman who is a romance writer, but she has started a whole business where she hires models, she gets props, she has professional photographers take things, she sells stock photos, she also designs covers. She's designed hundreds.
Yes.
And they're stunning,
Beautiful.
absolutely stunning.
Absolutely beautiful.
Or people who do the marketing aspects of it. So there's a lot of different things. You can pay somebody to do things, or you can do it all yourself. But there's a whole cottage industry that has sprung up around
Isn't that
self-publishing
amazing?
too.
Yes.
Yeah. And I want to go talk about one specific thing that has been in both of the pro column and the con column, and that's the editing. Because I have had some authors say, well, I'm going to do it myself because I'm not going to deal with some editor. And I'm telling you, if you're a professional writer, it's gold to have a good editor. It is gold. You want that, not just anybody else looking,
Right.
but you want somebody who is going to see the problems.
That's it.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I wanted to talk with both of you about tonight, because it's also something we share in common, is the Writers' Organization Novelists Inc. Because what we are seeing in Novelists Inc., the whole membership has changed because of electronic publishing. So it used to be Novelists Inc., organization for professional writers, have to have at least 2 books published by a traditional royalty-paying
Yes.
publisher. Still having royalty-paying.
Yes, that hasn't changed.
That part has not changed, but they are now approving electronic publishers who meet certain criteria. But I want to talk from the perspective of the professional writer. What do you get from Novelists Inc.?
Support, knowing you're not in it alone. I mean, as I said, we are fortunate. We do know other authors. We live near authors. Not everybody is that lucky. Also, it's a huge database of experience.
Oh, yes.
If you have a question about anything, some obscure thing to do with a certain geographic area, something from history, something about food, what restaurant would you find in a certain city, any number of things, somebody there will know
Somebody
the
knows.
answer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Usually several
somebody
somebodies. And, you just we have an email link, and people go on there, they ask questions, and there's always somebody who can help.
But they're very in tune to the needs of the membership. As publishing changes, the organization changes along with it. So you find what you need through Novelists Inc., and I found that to be true more so than other writing organizations I've been a member of.
I know for me, I love the fact that these are all professional writers, and they are candid about the ups and downs of the
Right.
business,
Yes.
and they freely share information about their contract terms.
Yeah.
So you really, really do see what's...
But you go to a writers' conference at Novelists Inc., and since everybody's published, everybody's been in the trenches. So if you say, well, yeah, my publisher dumped me, and somebody says, oh, yeah, mine dumped me too, don't worry about it, here's what you have to do.
Yeah.
It's no one going around going, oh, she got dumped by her publisher,
Right,
oh no,
right.
this.
Or she
because-
got rejected. It's
Sure.
like, please.
Yeah.
Sure,
Yeah.
everybody's
It's just part
been
of it.
there, and so you feel a bunch of kindred spirits when you go to a Novelists Inc. conference.
Well, I think the baseline of having sold at least 2 books to a royalty-paying publisher, that starts you on a whole level of professionalism that you don't get from a lot of writers groups, which run the gamut from somebody who's thinking about writing a book. I might like to write a book someday. Maybe I'll play around with my computer in my spare time, to people who are multi-published New York Times bestselling authors. That's a wide range, and you
Yes.
end up with a whole different field.
Well, publishing is a business, and everybody respects it as a business. So, other thing I want to talk with you each about is what's coming up next for each of you. So, Leslie, as Lindsay Chase, you've got another book is coming out from Samhain, Honor.
Yep, that'll be in July.
And that'll be in July. And because I'm a member of the critique group, I know the other thing you're working on. But tell us a little bit about the type of book.
It's an urban fantasy.
Quite a change.
Quite a change. But I like the challenge of doing something different. So I thought, geez, let's give it a shot, see what happens.
Well, and I'm enjoying seeing the pages,
Thank you.
you know, week by week, which has been wonderful. And Sharon, what's brewing in your mind here for the next project?
Well, as you know, I've been taking a bit of a hiatus from writing, but I am working on basically a sequel series from my 7 books that I did. It's a sort of a subset of that called the Knight's Quest series. It's basically a Knight's Tale meets Special Forces.
Oh, I love it.
So
I love it.
It's kind of the same type of an idea, but with a different approach to it, I think.
So with the changes in electronic publishing and now the changes in, let me ask you this, how does the electronic publishing world now affect your decision, or does it affect your decision about what you write? Anything at all?
I don't think it affects it at all. No.
It's the story?
Yeah, it's the story.
Yeah.
I don't think it's, I'm going to write this because I know it's hot as an ebook subgenre.
No.
You know, it's just something I want to work on.
Well, I think, too, the fact that it's not like you've totally decided you're not going to send to, say, traditional publishers or not. I don't think any of us have bagged that idea, basically.
No.
So there's any number of options you can explore for what you want to do with your book. Which,
it's nice
if you want to bring it out yourself,
options.
you know, go through the various
Sure.
aspects of that, you can, which is a nice thing because, let's face it, we've all dealt with rejection, too, and you might have something that a publisher just doesn't seem to go for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it might not be anything wrong with the book. And this gives you the option. You still could bring it out there, and there very well may be an audience for it.
Well, ladies, this has been really interesting, and there's certainly a lot more we could delve into deeper into the whole idea of electronic publishing, and I think I'll have you back again on another show. I would love to talk. We'll get Joyce, and we'll talk about the critique group and what that is, what that's like, because I think there's some people in the audience who would benefit. But both Leslie and Sharon, thanks very much for being on the show tonight and sharing the information. And let me thank you in the viewing audience as well. I love to close with the words of the fantasy writer Ursula Le Guin, who said, "There have been civilizations that did not use the wheel, but there have been no civilizations that did not tell stories. So find your story and find a way to tell it. And do join us again next time." Thank you.
Food for the crew and guests was provided by Manchester Grill of Manchester, Connecticut, and Angelo's Restaurant of Glastonbury, Connecticut. Be sure to send your writing questions and your comments on the book club selection to Zita at page 1, P.O. Box 1515, Manchester, Connecticut, 06045-1515, or send an email to Zita at page1tv.com.